Welcome to Strong Boys.
I'm Jackson Strong,
I'm Brzezinski Boyce
and we're here to talk about urban issues
in urban development,
and housing,
affordable housing,
economic development,
economic growth,
transportation,
strategic planning.
all types of stuff that impacts urban development. This is what we talk about and how it impacts our communities.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, this particular session is for your local developers.
Is for local developers, architects, but we're going to be talking specifically about what's it called?
So, today we're talking about the 21st Century Road to Housing Act that was just passed.
By the Senate and Congress, but it's waiting for somebody's
We're
signature.
still
Last
waiting
I
on
heard, yeah.
somebody to
It's
sign it.
probably it will be law
We're hoping,
somehow.
we're hoping, we're
Well,
hoping.
not to
But
jinx it.
there's a few
Yeah,
things that we want to address about this bill. We want to educate folks who don't know what's happening. We want to give you a perspective from our personal experiences about the bill,
yeah.
particularly one specific section. You want to talk about the section that we want to talk about?
We want to talk about pre-approved housing plans,
Pre-approved housing
which is
plan.
a potentially very powerful tool. And I have to give a shout out to the American Planning Association for actually lobbying to get some of that language in there because that's some pretty progressive stuff.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. We're actually
Yeah,
glad that they're lobbying on our behalf. Thankfully, there are good people out there that are lobbying for better places to be made, and you too can get involved in the placemaking process. And by listening to us, we're hoping that you can learn something and be active in your communities wherever you are in the United States.
exactly. We're based in Tampa. I do urban planning.
And I'm a real estate developer and a social engineer and strategic planner here in Tampa as well.
To put it lightly.
Yeah, all right.
So, with that said, I want to talk about this particular tool
Okay.
and how it can be used to really make potentially a significant improvement in terms of housing construction and development. So, Brzezinski, you've done a lot of housing development and construction, renovations, investment. In terms of new construction, let me just first ask you this: when you after you buy a property, how long does it take before you can actually pick up a hammer and start getting to work?
Well, that process can vary, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the city that you're in, depending on the local municipality, depending on the zoning,
Mhm.
right? If you want to get zoning changed, if you want to get plans passed, certain places that you may go to, you have one person that speak up at a meeting and say, "We don't want that built in our community," and guess what? Your deal is, and you have to start from scratch. And I have personal friends that have experienced that. I've gone through additions and adding bathrooms and bedrooms and having to wait for those plans to be approved
Yep.
and things of that nature. So it can take a while. It can
For,
vary.
for new construction, like on the fast side, what's considered the fast process where, okay, you buy the property, you want to go ahead and get started on construction. How long is it going to take for you to actually get permission
Sure.
between the zoning and the building to actually start construction?
I mean, maybe 6 months.
Maybe 6 months. And
Maybe.
that's on the fast side.
Maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So the pre-approved plans, and this is why I'm very excited about this program
Dang.
because in theory, what a pre-approved plan is a plan that has already been reviewed by to comply with all the zoning standards, all the land use standards,
Mhm.
and all the construction standards. So there's basically two big hurdles,
Right.
right, that you have to go through. Maybe you could just elaborate that. I know a lot of you probably already know about that, but for those of you who might be less familiar with the process, uh, you have to go through a couple different things. So you want to maybe elaborate on that?
Well, I'll definitely elaborate on the beauty in having pre-approved plans. Shout out to my friend Jennifer Kraus with Liberty House Plans, who has an amazing set of plans that you can go ahead and look up right now and get more information on. But that is half the battle, right?
Right.
Being able to have plans that are approved that people in certain municipalities can look at
Yeah.
and say, "Look, we want this, we're okay with this, and this can be built."
Right. But when you go to construct, you have to first get a zoning approval,
Correct.
right? And then
If
you
you're
can
thinking
get
zoning, correct.
the building approval
Correct.
after that, right? So that's what it takes. So maybe let's just back up for a second, really quick, right? Because housing in the United States, and not just the United States, I think it's a problem in almost around the world right now.
Right.
It's really expensive. It's incredibly
It
expensive.
is.
Like it's crazy expensive, right? And uh, it takes a long time to even just be able to build housing. Now, if you look at like 100 years ago, back when we were building our cities, and actually some really nice housing stock, like even if you ride around Tampa, I mean, you've been to Seminole Heights, you've been to Hyde Park, you've been to some of these neighborhoods. Uh, they weren't waiting 6 months to get permits. And last I checked, most of those houses are still standing.
Right, right. And a lot of them were historical homes, not designated, but I mean, I would say built in the 1920s, right?
Yeah,
My first ever flip was in Seminole Heights, and that was a 1921 built
right.
wood frame house, raised. That's where the home where I did an additional bathroom and bedroom. It didn't take too long for that process, but this was back in 2018,
Mhm.
2019. But you know, I remember.
But those type of houses that we now designate historical,
Right.
those the process to build them and to be able to produce them, it was cheaper to build
Yep.
and it was a lot quicker.
Yep.
And time is money. Like I know that sounds super cliche,
Right.
but time is money.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
If you're buying a house, you better believe that the time it takes to just get permission to build that house is baked into the cost of buying that house.
Right. So here's the challenge, right? So you have smaller developers like myself who are not big corporations who can't afford, let's say we buy a property using, creative financing, different types of funding, hard money loans or non-institutional funding, we're having to pay a mortgage on either that asset every month. And we can't afford to wait long months for those plans to be approved in order to build. So that puts guys like myself and other small scale developers out of the game.
And that's so interesting you point that out because that's just another whole dimension. Not only is it the policy that we have around producing housing drive up the costs, but it also makes it harder for people to engage economically in producing housing. And it benefits the the more larger institutional players. Is that what we want? Is that
Right.
public policy? Is that something that we should go for? I
Right.
mean, I don't know. Does that protect health, safety, welfare?
Right.
I don't think so.
Right.
But I would let's talk about what pre-approved plans are, right? So pre-approved plans is the city has already reviewed a set of plans, right? Typically what they've done it in certain cities in the United States already, right? There's Kalamazoo, Michigan. There's South Bend, Indiana. There are other jurisdictions where the city has retained architects and the architects put together a full drawing set, full construction drawing set. It complies with the zoning, and then it also the building department will review it. So you have a catalog of plans that you can choose from. So if you're trying to build something, you can build something custom if you want. Like if you want to go through the standard process, you can absolutely do that. It doesn't take away anything, but it does give you an opportunity to simply buy a set of plans and you can get permits in a week. All you have to do is show up with a site plan
Right.
for basic review, sewage connection, foundation plan. Everything else aside from that has already been approved by the city. And you only have to pay either a nominal fee or nothing at all. I mean, even if you just pay a nominal fee,
Right. You're gonna pay something.
you're going to pay something, but it's going to be way less
Right.
than what you'd normally pay. And that makes a huge difference. I mean, tell me how big of a difference
Huge.
would that make for you trying to build
I mean,
something
I'm
if
glad.
you're able to start construction a week after you buy the property, close on the property?
Right, right. I'm glad you asked because again, I'm here to represent the smaller developers, right? Who may not have old traditional money, but I want to empower those smaller developers or those people out there thinking about becoming developers, infill developers, to be able to take control of those neighborhoods that they live in and be able to invest and be able to do these deals, right? So I think that having these pre-approved plans now empowers them. Now gives them the ability, the affordability to be able to get in the game.
Yep.
Limit
It kind
those
of levels the playing field.
levels.
Now you got the same process that all the bigger players that can afford
Correct.
to wait 6 months, a year, 2 years. It can take forever to get approval. One of the other things I really like about it, especially from urban planning perspective, and you know this as well as anybody, as someone who has studied with Andres Duane and new urbanism.
Shout
So
out to DPZ and Andre.
absolutely. So I bring up that example because when we're when a city puts together a catalog of pre-approved plans, they can really elevate the architectural character of that city because you're not just going to have an architect, you're not going to put an RFP out there and retain an architect to build some, ugly plans that is going to detract from your community. You can actually elevate the architectural standard. You can use a vernacular that is common to that particular area and something that reflects, the local architectural character of that community. And that way, I think you get the best of both worlds. You get the lower costs and you get better architecture.
No, I'm actually glad you said that because sometimes that's usually the barrier, right? Where you have someone wanting to build something that doesn't flow with the fabric of that neighborhood, and the deal is shot down or the project is shot down as a result.
Yep.
But now, if you have these pre-approved plans implemented in certain cities, you have something that's aesthetically pleasing to the fabric of the neighborhood that everyone is okay with. But that's the
Exactly.
question: how do we ensure that everyone's okay with these pre-approved plans?
Well, I don't think there's a single thing you could do in the world that everybody
Not
is going to be
everyone,
okay with.
some people.
Okay.
So what do you do?
Uh, the well, first, to be clear, like when we talk about pre-approved plans, we're not talking about larger apartment buildings and giant structures. In fact, it's something really almost entirely geared towards home ownership,
Right.
right? And that's something that's just in huge need throughout our communities because they talk about what they call the missing middle housing, right? Because in a lot of areas in a lot of cities, you're only allowed to build a single family detached housing, or you can build these apartment buildings, which are typical. You see these like 5/1 apartment buildings being built because it's kind of just lines up with the financing, it lines up with the land use. We've been building that a lot in the United States for the past several years, but those are all apartments, right? What about if you're trying to be, what about for families that want to live in cities? You can't always only build single family detached housing because you run out of room, right? So you have to, like, it takes up X amount of room. It's geometry. That's all it is,
Right,
right?
right. So density, right? So how does this impact the level of density in certain infill development? And can you speak on your experiences, working from a public standpoint?
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, you're gonna build them. It complies with the zoning. So that's the whole thing, right?
okay,
Because changing the density or changing the zoning, whole different conversation.
right,
We're just talking about building plans that already comply with your existing zoning code. Of course, you can always change the code, but that's a different discussion, right?
different months.
Alls we're talking about is doing stuff that complies with the zoning code. And I think that it's in the public's interest that we are setting a higher standard for architectural quality. So the stuff that we actually permit in our neighborhoods is going to be filled in with the type of development that is going to enhance that neighborhood overall. So is everybody going to be happy about it? Well, this is, again, like if we're talking about increasing density, I mean, that's just a different topic altogether.
Right, right. No, agreed, agreed. So, in your opinion, where do you see these pre-approved plans being most effective? Is it more or less the small scale developers, or do you think major corporations? How do you think they're going to respond to these pre-approved plans?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the housing development that you see in the United States, you have corporations that will take a plan, they'll get it approved at the building department, and they'll build basically what they call cookie cutter housing, right? They'll build it forever. So that's almost like their own internal pre approved plan. The building inspector, the building department has already reviewed the plan, they know it, right? So as long as you're not changing it, if you're using the same plan, it's almost they're building at such a volume that they already kind of have that locked in, right? The stuff that you're going to find being built inside of cities a lot of times is a smaller developer because you don't have a huge amount of land to work with. You're just talking about one-off deals here and there. You find a single property. The big guys, they're not scraping around for just one little
Right.
property deal. You know, that's the little guys. But now the little guys are going to uh, be able to build something at the same cost structure,
Right.
right? They're not disadvantaged by it.
And that's what I want to make sure that we educate. I want to open up the floor to folks to understand that this bill actually helps the little backs, right? It helps the everyday American. Let's just go back to history. America was built on the concept of being able to buy property, be the lord of your land, right? And that's how you build wealth and be able to pass on your wealth, right? So this bill to me is a significant shift in opportunity for those who want to take advantage of the system that America has in place to be able to gain wealth for your family, for the smaller guys, to be able to pass that on, right? And
Yeah.
to build things.
Well, when you look at housing prices right now in the city, you know, like it's supply and demand, right? There's no, that's all it is. It's math. It's not ideology. And if, you know, all it is supply and demand. And when you look at the costs of new housing, it's so high, right? It's not because we're just all greedier now. It's because the cost of constructing and the cost of producing new housing is so high that that's the only price that kind of makes sense for someone to go and buy property, wait a year, 2 years to get permits, build a really expensive thing. The way that pre-approved plans bring the cost down, like it's on the time side, but it's also on the ability for contractors to work with something that they know how to build, right? They're building something that they're experienced in doing and they get really efficient at it. And not only that, but you might even have certain types of plans like attached duplexes or townhouses. You can actually build them, a lot of them prefabricated to a certain extent. You know, you can kind of just get economies of scale.
Right.
That brings down costs. I mean, today, building a house today is a lot more expensive in the past. Even if you take away all the zonings and the land use stuff, you know, we still have way higher insulation requirements, fire stopping, you know, there's a million things, energy efficiency. The requirements today are nothing like it was 100 years ago. So there's certain stuff that inherently is going to be more costly, but there's still a lot that we control that brings that cost down. And when you bring the cost down, now in neighborhoods that before people wouldn't be able to make money on because the cost of building a housing is so high, you're not going to be able to sell it at that super high price. If you're able to bring that cost down of producing housing, there's a lot of areas and a lot of neighborhoods that can stand to realize a lot of new housing investment where before it wouldn't have made sense.
I'm glad you said that because as a small scale developer, and this is kind of helping the audience, and they're probably thinking, sometimes people look at developers as, and also landlords, because I wear both hats, right?
Yep.
I enjoy being a landlord, I enjoy being a developer, but we get a bad stigma, right? They often think that you're a greedy developer, you're just trying to get rich and make money. But you pointed on something, talk about something that was very interesting, is the fact of affordability. It's still a business, right? So as a developer, you want to be able to create affordable housing. Everybody like, why don't they just make it affordable? Well, it has to be affordable to build first. So can you talk a little bit about that? Not from a developer standpoint, but just from a policy standpoint, how policy can impact making building affordable and how that trickles down to allowing more affordable housing to
Yeah.
everyday residents.
Well, basically, with the pre-approved plan, you kind of want to gear your plans towards something like what the market wants. Like if you're a city and you're trying to issue an RFP, you know, you don't want to build like only tiny houses. You don't want to build giant mansions. You kind of want to hit like the large segment of the marketplace, especially for families. I feel like families are really hard to you know, have a house anywhere near where you work or anywhere near where there's economic opportunity. Really expensive cost of housing, right? And so if you're able to build you know, an efficient layout, well designed, you know, again, like you're taking the whole entitlement process, the whole process that it takes to just get permission to build, basically off the table. The architect, you don't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars doing a custom architectural plan. You can if you want, right? But you have the option to build something where you're paying just a nominal fee. You might pay $1,000 licensing fee, right? And by the way, it's still good for architects. If you're an architect in a city, part of the one way to set up the program, there's multiple ways to do it, right? There's certain cities that have gone out there and they put an RFP out, they've hired an architect, and they come up with certain plans. I think another approach to achieve the pre-approved plan program is to have architects that just license their plans to the city. Like you just put it a part of the catalog, and if the city deems that it's the type of housing that we think is appropriate and contributes to the city, then any architect can license it, and you'll get a nominal fee for the same plans that you already developed, right? But you bring that cost down, taking the time frame away. One thing I really want to stress too is that the pre-approved plan program, it's really intended to take that whole process and make it a week. Like we shouldn't be like, oh, we can chop it down to like a couple months and do this meeting and this hearing and stuff like that. If you're doing it like that, you're not doing it right. You got to do the program so you get your permits next week. You should be able to click the plan. Most lots, by the way, and that's the other thing too. Most properties in any given city are pretty common.
Right.
Like 50 by 100 lot,
Standard.
you find that everywhere in the country. In certain cities, you might have a different common type of lot size. Well, design for that. But for like most parcels, you should be able to like just click the house you want, go pick up the plans. And the other thing I want to mention is the customization, right? Because it's not like you have to build exactly the same color and the same siding. And there's certain areas where you can have some flexibility over the aesthetic to make it a unique product.
Nice, nice. So let's talk about the naysayers. Those are out there like, you know what? We don't want pre plans. You want custom plans. What if all their plans is something that I don't like? So what would you say? And I can respond to this as
Yeah.
well, but I'll let you start. What would you say to those who are like, I don't like any of the plans that are on
You're talking about the pre-approved plan naysayers?
there?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I didn't even know that they existed. I mean, there's naysayers about a lot of stuff, but pre-approved plans is it's a pretty new policy tool, right? There's only a handful of cities that have it. California does have it for ADUs and stuff like that, right? The accessory dwelling units, like the small homes, like kind of the tiny homes that you're allowed to have on your property, which are great for family members, renting them out to, an individual or something along those lines. But I don't think it's the pre-approved plans is of all the things urban planning. I think it's probably one of the least controversial things.
I hope so. Hope so. And I think those that are listening and watching right now can support these pre-approved plans so that way we can get, lower barriers of entry for the everyday small scale developer to be able to do what they do best.
Yeah.
And those who are thinking about getting into the real estate industry.
Well, I think like I mean, look, most people they're going to be concerned about pre-approved plans. The impact to most people out there, I mean, they don't really care about the developer probably so much as they care about trying to make housing more affordable. But a there is an important policy argument about leveling the playing field and democratizing housing production, because the other aspect of that is it creates more economic opportunity for people who are just starting off, who aren't wealthy. Because I mean, did you start with a lot of money doing real estate?
No,
Did you come from a rich family?
no.
Really? They didn't just
So
shower you with money?
right. So first
Okay.
generation Haitian, natural born citizen.
Hmm.
I know we're under attack, but I was born here, so I am a U.S. citizen. But I don't come from that, so I had to learn how to raise capital and how to do things creatively to even get into this.
I heard all that stuff's really easy. I
It
heard
is.
I heard all
It
that
is.
stuff's extremely
Just
easy to
being
do,
without
right?
peer group plans, right?
Okay.
Just being able
Yeah, right.
to do that. But no, I think that with these pre-approved plans, what that does do is open up the door toward those who have a similar background as myself, who have experiences where they can't fit that profile. Which I want to also talk about how does this affect the financial institution, right? For those who are lending, right? Because I know that as politics change, so does the financial landscape, and those lenders start to either increase, and some may argue that they move the goalposts, back and forth depending on these policies. But how do you anticipate, in your opinion, from a, if you can touch on this, from a financial standpoint, what do you think is going to happen with these financial institutions and hedge funds now that these pre-approved plans? How are they going to be affected?
That's actually, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't even thought about that dimension, and that's where your real estate background comes in, because that's the type of stuff that you think about. Where
Right,
am I going
right,
to get financing?
right,
So as an urban planner, I'm like, I'm financing, financing.
right, right.
I
You're
don't
like,
really
that's
care
you
about it,
guys' problem.
right?
We set the
Yeah,
bill.
right, exactly. Uh, in theory, though, one would think that a lender would probably be a lot more comfortable lending out to a project where that you're going to be able to build it, and it's a product that a lot of people build. And the other thing too, you get a not only does it help like the investor developer, but also all the contractors. Okay, because think about that, right? Because a lot of people, especially on these smaller projects, it's the same dynamic, right? The people that are building these smaller level projects, they're not these big institutions. This is creating economic opportunity for people who are starting from nothing, right? To be able to get an ability to start. And when you start small, the sky's the limit, right? You can always go bigger, or you can specialize or do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, I think lenders are probably, we're hoping, would be a lot more comfortable. And that's a great question. I don't even know whether there's any additional like law, policy, legislation that's needed to facilitate that, or if that's just something the marketplace is naturally going to adapt
And that's
to
what I
them.
wanted to point
Yeah.
out. So I think that with these pre-approved plans, it's going to have a ripple effect. It is also is going to affect the financial institution, right?
Yeah.
Because now these lenders, hopefully hard money lenders, non-institutional lenders, are going to look at it and say, "Hey, this person has pre-approved plan. We've seen it successfully done before. It would lower their risk factor, right, in this particular project because we know that these plans have been pre-approved. And that they have been built already, right? And then to your point, from a time standpoint, that's going to create more mass production
Mm.
because
Yep.
we already know what to do with these plans. We already have
Yep.
subcontractors in a particular market that already work on these plans.
Yep.
That should be able to increase the volume
Yeah.
of things getting
And the interesting thing, I feel like this really puts cities at a better level playing field, right? Because we've seen an explosion in suburban development outside of cities, surrounding cities, because it's so easy to build. There's so few obstacles. There's so much land to work with. You don't have to worry about anything like, zoning and land use entitlement. Very easy. You get these big institutional developers who copy the plan, basically, again, have their own pre-approved already, right? This is not some kind of exotic idea, but it is in the sense that now we're actually making it kind of a national, policy. Now, keep in mind, it's the national, what's in this bill basically would enable HUD potentially to give out grants to cities to adopt this program. So it doesn't mean that, oh, we're all going to have pre-approved plans now. No, now it's up to cities to take initiative. We'll see how the regulations are ultimately chiseled out, because the devil's in the details. But if it's anything, you know, uh, if it lives up to the intent of the bill or anything resembling that, then it's going to give cities the ability to implement this program. And now that volume and that investment is stuff that can occur in areas that have long since been neglected, that have an aging housing stock, that need the investment. So when you stack all the potential benefits of this, lower cost, quicker time, more housing production, more economic opportunity, more investment in our communities, elevated architectural quality. That's a pretty sick freaking policy. I gotta say, I'm giving. I'm not, particularly generous when it comes to federal legislation a lot of times, but I gotta say, I actually think that this is one of the more exciting policies I've seen, and since it's being put into law now, I thought it's probably perfect that we're discussing this now.
Man, we covered a lot today. We covered a
Covered a
lot.
lot, yeah.
We appreciate you guys joining us for our first episode. So, in summary, what do you want people to remember the benefits from this program?
They reduce housing costs by speeding up the timeline, by making it easier for builders, developers, contractors to actually produce it and to construct it. You can get economies of scale.
Okay.
You can give opportunities
Right.
for new participants who are starting from nothing and want economic opportunity in being able to build housing. You get more investment in neighborhoods, especially neighborhoods where that have long since realized any housing investment. You get more home ownership opportunities. You get a more stable tax base. You get elevated architectural quality. It's kind of a long list.
It's a pretty long list, and
Pretty
it's
long
good.
list,
So, I
yeah.
don't want to belabor it and add to it. You guys were able to join us for the first episode of Strong Boys podcast.
I do think, before we cut it off
Talk to me.
prematurely, Brzezinski,
Talk to me.
I think that it's important to note that it is up to cities to pursue the grants as they come available, right? So HUD needs to first fund it. We don't know exactly. Now, this bill doesn't have any funding in it, but the scaffolding is there, right? The law is going to be in place. And so even if maybe this year that funding isn't available, the beautiful thing about this policy is that the framework and the scaffolding for being able to do this and being for the federal government to be able to support municipalities in implementing these programs, it's just something that could potentially be really transformative if it's utilized.
And local stakeholders, people in your neighborhood development associations, people just homeowners, renters in your local municipalities, encourage your local politicians, your planners, your city council to bring them, uh, make them aware of this bill and advocate to have this pre-planned policy implemented in your city, in your town.
Definitely.
Speak up about it, because oftentimes there's this legislation that gets passed in certain communities, and folks who are in position of leadership just don't do anything about it until the people
Or
start
they're not
making
as
noise.
aware,
They're
right?
not
And
aware.
that's
Yeah,
kind of what we're talking about it now, to just kind of spread the word about that. And we'll be back with a lot of other content. We're going to be talking about all those topics we
absolutely,
mentioned in the beginning.
absolutely.
We'll try and dive into stuff that's happening right now and really just talking about solutions, right? Because we got a million and one problems.
That's right.
We got traffic congestion, we got high housing costs. There's so many issues that are facing cities around the country that are similar, right? And we're in this business, and there are solutions to these problems, and that's kind of what we want to focus on.
That's right. So if you enjoyed the content today, please go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. Strong Boys podcast. That's boys, not BOYS, but BOIS. Okay, so that's Strong Boys.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's
forgot
written
it?
in the title, so I'm pretty sure they're gonna
please,
spell it.
please follow us on social media. We're gonna have a lot more content for you guys. We're really excited that you joined us today, and thank you, my brother.
Thank you,
I
man.
appreciate you.
Hell yeah.
Let's make it happen.
All right.
Yes, sir.
We'll be back soon.
Strong Boys.
Yep.